Welcome to the Older Workers Forum. I think we've now got a regular schedule of forum meetings throughout the year, and at the end, if we get time, I'd like to float an idea which Laura doesn't know about, so she'll be nervous now, about some of the things we could be doing to raise the issues around older workers and sort of the impact of the pandemic on older people in the workplace. But let's get on with today's agenda. I'd like to introduce you to our new colleague, Dr. Carson. We love calling him Dr. Carson because he's recently finished his PhD, and we're very, on his behalf, we're very proud. And Callum's going to just sort of set some context with some labour market analysis and also some information on the implications from the spring budget on older workers, and I think that's a really good starting point. So enough from me. Over to you, Callum.
Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'm going to turn off my video to share my screen because my bandwidth doesn't like me doing both, which isn't ideal. But can everyone see that?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, I'm just going to quickly take you through a few of the kind of headline items that we saw in last week's budget and some of their implications for older workers in particular. I think it's fair to say that it wasn't a particularly dramatic budget that really shook things up, as it didn't really include any major new policy announcement, but it still has some important consequences moving forward that it's good for us all to be aware of. There we go. So the most high-profile announcement that we kind of already knew was that of the extension of the job retention scheme to September, as lockdown continues and a quick return to a fully reopened economy remains uncertain. This is an extension that I'm sure a lot of us welcomed and should hopefully ensure that employers now have a bit more breathing space to effectively plan for the end of the scheme come autumn itself. It remains to be seen what exactly will happen to unemployment rates when furlough ends. But it appears that for the moment, we have at least averted a dramatic spike in unemployment while we're still in lockdown through this extension. I know that a number of experts, such as Tony Wilson, have argued that the labour market policies we've seen so far, especially the job retention scheme, have ensured that we have definitively averted an unemployment catastrophe of even more dramatic proportions. I remember last week he said that if employment had followed GDP, it would have fallen by 2.9 million, for example. But nevertheless, we'll see what September brings. I'm certainly crossing my fingers that they're right, and I'm also leaning towards the optimistic side, but we just don't know at the moment. However, alongside the good extension about furlough was the announcement that the existing £20 uplift to UC will also be extended to September, but not made permanent. This came as a bit of a disappointment to many organisations across our sector and others, especially ERSA itself. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation have been leading an inspiring campaign in recent months, urging the government to keep the lifeline of a permanent uplift of UC rates. And they've been highlighting the impact that the existing uplift has had on the lives of working people who are already barely keeping themselves out of poverty. And we were disappointed to see that the government didn't take heed of this when making this decision, but we'll continue to campaign for a permanent uplift in league with other organisations around this. We also saw a few more details on the UK Shared Prosperity Fund by the more details on the introduction of the UK Community Renewal Fund, which is a new funding pot of 220 million dedicated to help local areas across the UK prepare for the introduction of the fund following our departure from the European Union. And while it was good to see the first list of 100 places chosen to implement pilot projects around the country, there's been a distinct lack of detail about transparency about how these were chosen, so we're keeping a close eye on that. And Elizabeth, in particular, is making sure that we're fully abreast of any more information in that area. So I guess this is the banner headline for the budget, really, which is that I think it's fair to say that there's been a lot of disappointment in general at the lack of any major new policy announcements surrounding helping people get back into work and or around reskilling. The labour market impact of previously announced schemes like Kickstart and Restart has not really been felt yet, which gave this budget a very much like a wait and see feel to it. And we were particularly disappointed not to see the Chancellor announce an extension to Kickstart, which is currently scheduled to end in December 2021, as we think that some of the problems with the rollout mean that an extension would be good to make sure it really is as effective as it could be. And we were also particularly disappointed to not see any new announcements of policy programs dedicated to helping support those individuals already at a particular disadvantage within the labour market, including older workers and disabled and BAME job seekers. This is something that we would have really liked to have seen, and are disappointed that nothing major was announced in this area, particularly around older workers, as we know that people aged 50 and over have been slower to return from furlough than other groups, and they also saw the highest rate of redundancy at the end of last year. So I guess the most important consequence of the budget for older workers themselves was the extension and the expansion of the apprenticeship hiring incentive, with the cash bonus for hiring apprentices aged 25 and over set to double to 3,000, and the scheme extended by 6 months. This will hopefully give older workers more opportunities to both retrain and to take advantage of this incentive, and provide them with more opportunities in the labour market for increased access to apprenticeships. Although at present it remains to be seen how popular take-up by apprenticeship providers would be following this expansion. So this is something we'll certainly be keeping a close eye on as it develops, and I'd imagine through this forum too. The introduction of flexi job apprenticeships, which is targeted at those industries that cannot offer a long enough placement with a single employer for apprentices to meet the government's minimum 12-month duration requirement, may also work in giving older workers opportunities that fit around their own schedules. But this also remains to be seen. Excuse me. All in all then, while this budget was an important one in better setting out the government's plans and helping to support the labour market over the next 6 months and beyond, we also feel it was an opportunity to take more concerted action to help support better particular groups of workers and job seekers, better maximising their potential, particularly older workers, that was unfortunately not taken. But we remain optimistic about the impact that the expansion of the apprenticeship hiring incentive may have on increasing opportunities for older workers. We will keep campaigning in the meantime for a greater level of support for older workers, especially in the run-up to the next spending review. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Callum. Any contributors, questions? Or is that just the perfect context to start the day? Yeah. Okay. Well, I can't see any hands or anything, so shall we go over to Patrick?
Hello.
Hi. Patrick, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you very much, Elizabeth. So I'm Patrick Thompson from the Centre for Ageing Better. Very pleased to be here today. I lead our programme on age-friendly employers, but I think some of you probably know my colleagues pretty well. So certainly Kim Chaplin on the call here as well today, who's our Associate Director for Work. And I think Elaine Smith is also on the call as well, who leads our work in Greater Manchester on our employability work. And Jagdeep Saur as well, who some of you might know, who is my counterpart as well at Ageing Better. I've got a few slides to share, so I'll just try pulling them up now. Hopefully you can see them okay. Yes, just to say, you may well have met some of my colleagues previously. I do something a little bit different. So I'm less on the employment support side and the employment services side. My focus is really on employers and what they can be doing to support older workers and ultimately really get a lot of the value and benefit that older workers can bring. And I've just got a few slides to run through, and actually this dovetails quite well with what Callum just said. So yeah, thank you very much for that, Callum. Really interesting, really useful. Just a bit of background on Centre for Ageing Better. Some of you may know this already. We're a What Works Centre. We look at the evidence about what helps people to be in a good later life. We look at housing, communities, ageing and work, and we split the focus on work into two sides, one about supporting people back into work, and the other one is about, for people in work, how they can be supported in better work for longer. And just to stress, work matters for a lot of different reasons for people as they age, and particularly in the second half of their working lives. Interestingly, when we first set up the centre, we asked retired people what it was they most miss about work, and there's a whole range of things that people get out of work beyond just money. So the top reasons that people say they miss about work, I always like that top answer there, which is I don't miss anything. And it's just to say that people can transition into retirement as well, and it can be good for them as well. But really interesting there, finding that people miss the social interactions. So it's all these other things about work that people get. It's about meaning and purpose. The income is really important, but there are other things as well. And unfortunately, through our work, we see that too many people miss out on some of those good things, often because of ageism or employer behaviour or other things as well. And we also know that it's not a one-way thing anymore. So people do also return to work having retired. So 1 in 4 people in the UK unretire. So having said that they've officially retired, they do return to some form of paid work, and often that's sometimes a different job from what they did before. Sometimes it's through necessity. They've reassessed whether they can afford their retirement, and sometimes it's because they miss all those other aspects of work as well. This dovetails quite well with what Callum said. Callum, that was a fantastic update on the latest picture. This is a kind of a longer story. I mean, just showing ages along the bottom there, from 50 all the way up to 75, and employment rates on the left-hand side as well. Just to stress that, you know, employment rates are high in midlife, but they do rapidly drop off. So that from about the age of 55, employment rates do seem to decline for both men and women. So that by the year before state pension age, less than half of people in work. So we're trying to address some of that and ensure that people can both get back into work if they want to, but also they stay in work and it's fulfilling good work as well if they are currently employed. So we've got a whole program about becoming an age-friendly employer. You know, we mean a wide range of things by that. It really matters because, you know, this is a growing part of the UK workforce. I think many of you probably know this already, but, you know, 1 in 3 workers are over the age of 50. The average employee in the UK is now in their 40s. That's forecast to grow as well. So we're forecast to see 300,000 fewer workers under the age of 30 and 1 million more over the age of 50 by the year 2025. And yet most employers aren't ready for these changes that are happening to their workforce. So we're trying to work with them to address and change some of that. And it brings huge benefits for employers. So, you know, employers say that they value mixed age workforces. They can also transfer vital skills and knowledge. They can help solve complex problems, particularly having different age groups within the same teams. And really interesting, some research came out last year from the OECD about some of the positive productivity benefits of having older workers and how they can particularly support younger co-workers and increase their productivity as well. So because of all that, we've set out a range of guidance and we work with employers to try and promote these things. So this was based on a great deal of analysis and research, and then also consultation with employers about 5 things that employers can be doing. They're around flexible working, around age-positive recruitment, about health support as well in the workplace, about encouraging career development, particularly in midlife and also at all ages as well, and about creating an age-positive culture as well. And I know our next speaker after me from Saffron, I think, is really going to drill down into that bit about midlife and skills as well. And I'm just going to touch on a few things here that we're doing right now in terms of flexible working, recruitment, but also some of the midlife support we're looking at as well. So the first one on good flexible working, really important to be an age-friendly employer. You know, from what over 50s themselves say would help them to work for longer, the top reasons are really all around flexible working. So either being offered part-time working, chance to work flexibly, things around also flexible retirement opportunities or retire and return opportunities are all really crucial in supporting people to work for longer if they want to. So we've done a toolkit and a pilot working with TimeWise, who I'm sure many of you know are leading you know, experts in the field of flexible working. We worked with a number of large employers about things that they can be doing in terms of flexible working practices, particularly to support their older workforce. And if you're interested in following that link there, there's a whole range of toolkits and guidance there, line manager conversation guides, things around supporting particularly older workers who we often see do miss out on some of the positive aspects of flexible working, because employers often see it, even though anyone can has the right to request flexible working after 26 weeks, employers often have a hierarchy of who they think are most deserving in terms of flexible working. So this toolkit and pilot we did there can actually help to address some of those things as well. And the second bit I'll talk about is just about our work on recruitment. So we've done work on good recruitment for older workers, about trying to de-bias some of the ageism aspects within the recruitment process. We've got 2 reports out already, and we've got a 3rd coming out next month. And really, this just highlights this first one here about what employers' attitudes are to recruiting older workers and recruiters as well. Often employers don't consider age diversity to be a problem. They don't see an issue in terms of diversity, inclusion and age within their workplace. Where they do, they often see it in terms of younger workers particularly. And we found some really interesting but quite stark findings there about practice in terms of hiring for organisational fit, and often that could disadvantage older workers. And we've got a range of recommendations in there for employers to follow up as well. And then secondly, just this is looking at it from the older workers perspective as well. So this was a survey of older workers themselves, and also a range of case studies as well. We've got some, very strong, powerful video case studies as well, if you followed links at the end of this presentation. But, very stark. So over a third of people in their 50s and 60s felt disadvantaged in applying for jobs. That was about twice as high as the youngest age group we looked at, and higher than any other age group. And a lot of things that I'm sure many of you are familiar with or have heard yourselves around having things like too much experience, which was something, is what we called the report. And actually, if you think about that, it doesn't make any sense either for the employer or the wider economy or the employment support services for that to ever be the case, because too much experience, it doesn't really make much sense in terms of employers do need skills and experiences, and yet they often overlook the very potential employees who could provide that. We also saw that ageism could operate at all stages of the recruitment process, and there are things around the way that job ads and the words used in them that could put off older workers or feel like the job wasn't for them. And we've got a third report coming up that will provide some more concrete detail on the types of job ads and words that people can use in them, that we did through an online experiment. And finally, just to say that really impacts people just beyond just their applying for any one job or going for any one interview. It impacts people's wider lives as well. And I know many of you will know this from your wider work as well, but it's not just not getting a job. We saw it impacted people's health and well-being, their confidence, their sense of self and identity, and could be really debilitating as well for people. And finally, and this will lead on to our next presentation as well, we've done a range of work on midlife support and things like midlife MOTs. We think this period in life really matters in terms of your work and home life. Just to look at what is going on in people in their period of midlife. This is from the ONS's personal wellbeing measures by age, and you just look at across the bottom there are the age groups, and they are on the left hand side. It's an indicator of people's well-being across a different set of characteristics. So in terms of life satisfaction, feeling of your life is worthwhile, feelings of happiness, and feelings of anxiety. Really worryingly, there is this dip in midlife, or a high point in terms of anxiety, when people are less happy in terms of their well-being. And often this is a combination of things happening at home, sometimes things happening in their career. Often we talk to employees, and often it is about feeling overlooked in the workplace, taken for granted, having a lot of stresses put on you at home and at work. Often you may well be a carer, and often a multiple carer for young dependents as well as older parents. All these things can build and can be a bit of a pressure point in midlife. And yet at age 50, you might have another 20 years or so to go in your career. And I suppose you need a plan for that period just as much as you need for the first 20 years of your working life. So we're doing a range of work to try and address those things. We've worked on piloting things like midlife MOTs. So these came out of the Cridlem review of state pension age when state pension age did go up, and that recommendation was carried through. The review did also recommend that we need mitigations to help people work for their longer lives as well. And one of those things is potentially having a midlife MOT. We work with a number of private providers and innovators and advice providers about ways that those midlife MOTs could be delivered. And I know those are now carrying on as well in terms of many of the LEPs and also what DWP is rolling out, as well as many private providers as well. We've also done work on midlife support and what employers themselves can be doing to help their older and employees in midlife. And we've also done evaluations of people transitioning into retirement as well, and what actually some of the things are that people can be supported on in midlife that can help them to extend their working life as well. And just final kind of content slide here. These are some of the things that we found in our midlife MOT piloting and development could be important for people to think about in and around midlife. And we haven't been too specific on that, but maybe in people's mid-40s to mid-50s. And support that people can be helped with in terms of their work, their wealth, their health, and their emotional support as well. And often having a bit of a conversation, some advice and guidance on those things can really help people. And crucially, it was never a kind of a one-off conversation. People then were signposted to other things to go and follow up on as well. So that was one of some of the things we uncovered in the pilot there, and there's links to all this information available. And I suppose just to, I mean, I feel like that's probably a good link to our next presentation as well. I had a really interesting conversation with Saffron. I know there's a lot that has come out of Union Learn and the midlife reviews and the skills cards and things like that as well. It's fantastic to see those things developing as well. And we just think the more that is done to support people in this age group, the better. And often that can come in midlife as well. So all of that's available for free on our website. And I'll hand over now to our next presentation. And I think we were maybe going to have some joint questions at the end, if that sounds okay to ERSA and Ian as well.
That sounds like a really good way to deal with it. Thank you very much for that, Rick.
Thank you then.
Yeah, that was really, I think that worked really well between Callum and you, and now Ian. So over to you, Ian, from Saffron Interactive. Yeah.
Right, thank you very much. I'm trying to get myself set up as we speak. But yeah, so to quickly introduce myself, Ian Hilder, Saffron Interactive. And yeah, I mean, our background actually was in learning and development, 20 odd years or so been working in that market space, both developing content, but also platforms. As Patrick says, yes, Patrick and I have been in cahoots a little bit, so we had a conversation ahead of time. But yeah, particularly our association with Union Learn from the TUC has brought us into this employability space over the last sort of 3 or 4 years or so. And what I want to share with you, hold on 1 second, so let me share my screen. So what I'm actually going to talk about is a couple of sort of programs that do build on what Patrick has been saying. So let me just double check. Are we all seeing my screen now? Should be the main slide up there.
Yeah, we can see.
Excellent. Okay. So yes, so really building on what Patrick has been discussing there, and he's done some great work around these midlife MOT ideas. But one particular program that we were involved with was the Midlife Skills Review project. And this was an EU-funded project. It ran for just over 2 years or so. It formally ended in December 2019, but the platform's actually still live, and we'll let you have the links. You can still go and play on it there. But yes, it was so the program itself was aimed at developing a set of skills, a set of skills cards by which individuals could assess themselves, so they could rate themselves in terms of their skills, their competencies. And it was very definitely targeted at that midlife point, so people around 50 or above. So, as I say, we got involved in it and we were brought into it by the TUC and our association there. And we were actually basically developed the main core product that came out of the program. There were actually 4 outputs from it. One was a skill set, one was a badging, a digital badging process. The main was this third one, the Value My Skills tool, and then the fourth was actually a training program based around that. It was actually delivered in live in Helsinki. But yeah, so the main product that came out of it was this Value My Skills tool. And what this is basically about is a tool enabling people to assess their skills and then build an action plan off the back of that. It was rolled out across Europe, so it's been translated into 10 different languages. And though the program formally ended, as I say, in December 2019, it's still up there live, so the link's there for you, be in the slide set. Probably one of my colleagues can post the link to you, so you can always go and have a play on it. If you do go into the program at any point, essentially what you'll actually be taken through is a bit of a journey. There's a bit of a preamble. You get to meet the assistant. Anya is her name in this sort of case, explains what you're going to be doing. And then there's this nice sort of user interface, a little bit of gamification going on there. And you shuffle the pack of cards. And each card then is one of 48 skills. So you rate yourself here: competent, not very good, developed, etc., etc. So it's going to take you through this process, as I say, of rating these 48 skills. And the skills themselves, there was input from Dr. Barry Hobson. Some of you may be aware of him. He's worked a lot, I believe, within that age group, the rainbow years, older life people. So it was actually direct input from here that was the basis for these skill sets. So you're going to go through the program, you're going to rate yourself, you can pin the skills, you can add notes for later sort of reference, and you've got the assistant there, Anya, who can help you explain a little bit more, okay, what's this about, what's innovation, you know, and prompt you to sort of reflect a little bit more on your skills. And then an output from that, of course, is that essentially that builds up that portfolio of skills. You've got yourself and where you're going to rate yourself there, which is obviously something you can then be thinking about in the employability journey. How can I apply these? But also then think about, well, actually, what am I going to do with this now? What's an action plan? So off the back of it, it builds out this action plan. So that may be, yes, I'm going to take some further training in a particular area where I'm lacking maybe, or it's I'm going to apply for this job, whatever it might be. So it's sort of setting smart goals. So this is this particular tool. As I say, and it's out there and it's still live, so feel free to go and have a look at it. But the formal program ended in December 2019, and the University of Exeter then carried out an evaluation at that point. And some statistics here in terms of what they sort of came up with that, having gone out and carried out various sort of interviews, etc. And so 92% of people, very high rating, found that it was a useful tool to enable them to put together that portfolio of their skills. Interestingly as well, 42% of people found that it actually gave them new skills. They didn't give them new skills, but they uncovered skills that they'd never really sort of thought about before. And that's an interesting take as well, just going through that process. 75% of people went on to use the action plan. And I kind of like this sort of last statistic where it talks about 71% of people felt that they felt more confident afterwards. And I think kind of talks, and there was a couple of things that you mentioned, Patrick, which I found interesting. You were talking about anxiety, etc. And I think that's a particular sort of thing here. And so just going through the process is actually helping to build up that confidence for people. But anyway, so that was the Midlife Skills Review project, still active, and indeed there's talk about a further stage within that program. But for us, it didn't stop there. We were then approached and invited by Nesta to put together a funding bid as part of the Career Tech Challenge, really built on the back of the work we'd done in the Value My Skills program. And so we actually led the bid in this case. We were still working with the TUC, Union learned from the TUC, but we actually led the consortium for this bid and we duly won it. And just in November last year, towards the end of November 2020, we launched what we call Create Your Own Future. And this is basically an online employment journey, and I'll take you through that in a second or two to explain a little bit there. But it's aimed at both the individual, so the job seeker, but also working alongside advisors. And again, we'll see what that means a little bit. We brought in, as I say, we come from an L&D background, 20 years there. So we actually brought in some of the techniques that we'd used within that area, behavioral science. So what we're actually trying to do here is affect actual behavioral change. So it's not just about information now, it's actually getting people into constructive patterns of behaviors, applying for jobs, reviewing skills, undertaking trainings, all that good stuff. And we also brought in, I don't know if anybody's familiar with it, but Mark Savakas's career adaptability model, the 4 C's. Won't go into these 2 areas too much in detail, but happy to pick those up maybe in the discussion a little bit later, or indeed, you know, do feel free to sort of reach out. Okay, now I'm going to try and be clever now because I'm actually going to run a video. I could take you off run sort of a demo, but just time-wise, etc. So I'm going to run a little bit of a video now, a bit of an overview sort of video, and stop at various sort of points. So this gives a good sort of overview about what the program is all about, and a little bit about what the journey is for the individuals who are going to go and sign up and use the Create Your Own Future tool. So it'll take you a little bit through the actual sort of journey. But I want to pause at this sort of point because one of the biggest innovations in the program itself is really the user experience. So it's actually based around, or one of the wraparound technologies within it is an AI-enabled video mentor. So what actually happens is that when you, the user, first log into the system, you're given a choice, in this case within Create Your Own Future, of 4 different video mentors that you can actually choose. So you choose the one you're sort of most comfortable with. They'll have a quick sort of introductory, they'll introduce themselves, etc., etc. So this video mentor is then going to stick with you throughout the program, and the actual system itself, via the video, is actually going to have a conversation with you, the user, and there's various sort of different areas where it comes in. But at the very beginning, it'll have this conversation with you, which at the very outset is really about just sort of gathering some basic demographic information. So your name, where are you located, things like that. But rather than making it a bit of a daunting form filling sort of process, you can actually, yes, you can add in text, but it'll also recognize voice, it'll recognize videos. You can actually respond in that way, and it'll actually take that information, capture that information in that process. But as well as that sort of demographic gathering of information, the video mentor will also explore barriers that you may have. So at that very beginning conversation, it actually asks you, well, how comfortable are you using digital technologies? So given this is a digital platform, we want people to be comfortable. So if your response to that is not so cool, not so good, it'll actually lead you off. There's a little sort of training module within there that just gives some basics around using digital technologies. But it'll also, as well as doing things like that, it's actually got some sentiment analysis built into it. So at various sort of points through the process, it will ask you questions like, how do you feel about that? How confident are you in these areas? And it will recognize sort of keywords essentially. So I'm worried, I'm feeling unsure, I'm feeling excited. So the actual system itself, and this is where the AI is sort of kicking in, is then dependent on your responses to different questions at different times, the system will take you to different areas. That may be as simple as the video mentor coming back with a little bit more advice or something. If that's enough to get you going, then you can carry on with your journey. Or maybe it'll actually at certain sort of points to push to some external resources that are within the program. Or it'll actually say, okay, this might be a good time to have a talk with your live advisor. So as I say, it sits alongside that live advisor throughout the program. And as I say, and this happens, it's wrapped around the video mentor throughout the journey. Then it takes you through first part, a skills assessment. So similar in truth to the Value My Skills program, we've reused the technologies from that and repurposed the technologies there. But again, it's going to build up that skill. And the platform itself has a couple of more sophisticated things at this point, in that it takes that data from that skills assessment and it'll compare to job profiles. And we actually draw from the National Careers Service, so 1,527 job profiles that are on the National Careers Service. And it'll actually sort of match across. So, okay, so this is where you've rated yourself on these skills. These are the skills that are needed. You're a 70% match, or an 80% match, something like that. It'll also actually suggest training. So it's how you might want to develop yourself if this is a particular career you're thinking about going through. And that actually links out, well, it links out to a number of different resources. There's training both within the program, but external training programs as well. Within Create Your Own Future, it actually links out to some level 1 and 2 accredited courses that are from Skills Network. But what it also prompts you to do is investigate, explore. And it actually won't let you go on until you've at least pinned or explored 2 different sort of career paths. So this is really coming back to that sort of transferable skills thing, and rather than just being, okay, I stacked shelves at Sainsbury's, now I want to stack shelves at Asda. What else could I do? Where else could those skills take me? So there's a very powerful engine here to enable people on the basis of the skills assessment to actually then explore where else they can go. And what they can also do, and it's linked across here on the screen here, is that at that point as well, okay, so here's a job that I'm interested in, and it links out to the National Careers Service, so I can explore further what are my pay rates and things like that, the sort of information that is on that National Careers Service website. And it's an area in truth that we're looking to develop here. So technology itself, relatively easy to integrate into live job boards, and because we've got the demographic information, so we can actually come back and say, okay, you're looking for a job in Walsall, I don't know, but it actually comes back and say these jobs are currently sort of posted. So it's a development process going on. So once you've gone through that process and you've done the skills assessment, you've started looking at jobs, and that's an iterative process. You go back to it as many times as you like, review, etc., etc. But then it's going to help you and build out the action plans. So similar to the Value My Skills tool, SMART goals built into this. Though we've got a lot more information now for them. So yes, it's apply for a job within the next 7 days. Yes, it's complete this training by 28th of April or something like that. Let's go build out. Point to make as well is that the program is designed really that we don't just sort of see it as being a one shot. It's not just one journey and it ends when you've got yourself into a job. That's fantastic. But as well as it's actually for use for people who aren't necessarily, they're already in jobs, but they're looking to develop their career, more sustainable jobs. But also, if you are looking to get into a job, you're into a job now, but how do we develop and support beyond that? And I know there's a number of sort of programs, we're all familiar with Restart and things like that, you know, at the moment. And there tends to be this cut-off point, say, okay, you're in a job, great, fantastic. But we very much see the journey as being, okay, yeah, but how do we develop from there as well? So that's the sustainable career sort of element. So the program here is there. The advisor, maybe that's the end of their funding for that program, but the program's still going to be available. So you can come back 6 months later, 12 months, whatever you sort of want to do, reassess your assessment. Whatever you do, the dashboard is really just point, kicking off there, back to your action plan, but also looking at the training programs that are available. So say there's certain courses, little bite-sized courses there, maybe it's around CV. Also extend out and external sort of courses. So that's kind of the program, an iterative process. You've got that mentor helping you all the way through. But it's also designed that because we're capturing an awful lot of data here, is what more can we do with that to help the user? So we built an action plan. So now we actually kind of know some dates there. So the system itself will actually sort of send out prompts to the user and say, hey, you're going to apply for this job. Hey, you're going to do that learning, you know. So it's actually an email comes out from the mentor to say, hey, how's it going? Have you applied for this job yet? So you've got those sort of prompts as well. And also it's going to know when you haven't actually been in the process for 2 or 3 weeks, say. So it's going to reach out, is everything okay for you there? But as well as actually working, there's lines alongside 5 work that user. Excuse me. So there's a lot of back office functionality within it as well, whereby the advisor can go in, they can actually log in, and they're working with however many it is, 10, 20, 30, 40 individuals. So they can actually go in and see reports of people and how are they doing, where have they got within this process, how people analyze themselves in skills, etc. So they can actually use that as a collaborative tool as well. But the process, the system will also send out at risk alerts, I should say, at risk alerts. So it'll actually say, hey, Joe Smith hasn't been into the program for a couple of weeks or so. This may be a good time to actually reach out to them and say, how are things going, etc. So as I say, program very definitely sort of designed to sit alongside the live advisor. There's adaptations and can move on. Probably seen enough of the actual sort of process there. Obviously happy and delighted if anybody's interested, more in-depth analysis, more in-depth demo, happy and delighted to share that with you. I'd also sort of say at this point, the programme, as I say, launched in November 2020, so it's relatively sort of new, but we definitely see this as being a first iteration, a first version. So again, coming to sessions like this, and hopefully we can get into discussion or maybe offline subsequently, getting input from people such as yourselves is, okay, maybe there's a version for the older work group where it's more technically focused on that areas. Maybe there's certain sort of technologies within it that would actually work in different areas. So those are the discussions I'd love to be having with you. But for the sake of the session today, I drew out some statistics. There is going to be a formal review by the Learning and Work Institute. I think that's due to kick off end of this month, end of March, and be completed end of April time. But I thought I'd draw out some statistics for you of the users that have gone through the program to date. And we got a rough split. Okay, it's sort of a third, I guess you'd put in that sort of midlife and upwards. This program, unlike Value My Skills, wasn't necessarily specifically targeted at that, and particularly it was actually sort of accelerated as a result of COVID and a few things tweaked, so that it became a more extensive sort of tool. And I guess that kind of reflected a little bit. We got a third in the older age group, and we got 2/3 in that lower age group, if we're counting 45 and below is lower, and maybe that's a reflection a little bit of the sort of current situation. But I thought this might be interesting for discussion as well. This particular session and this particular forum is drew out some statistics and did some analysis on top 10 skills. So where people have rated them by competent or very competent, and so we're okay with these, and then breaking those, splitting those out into those two age groups you can sort of see here. See if there were any real dramatic or differences, etc. In the lower age group, we've got using technology up there, high up. Interesting though, and I think it was actually touched on, I forget to be honest whether it's Patrick or earlier on about the using technology, or whether it's Callum about that sort of using technology. It's still actually quite high in that 46 plus, so good to see it up there in a way. Also interested, improvisation, motivational, hit that bracket there in the older age group. Maybe that is about life experience and things. And that kind of feeds into a little bit that Patrick was talking about, that too much experience. Well, maybe there's value in that. Absolutely there is. And maybe that's something that the individual and the advisors can be working on, play to your skills after all. But in terms of actually sort of looking at the two together, how I read it is there's nothing dramatic. There's some subtle sort of differences there. But what's interesting, I thought, there is that these top 10, and those who are eagle-eyed will actually realise, as I realised 10 minutes before the session, there's actually 9 of them, but we can come back on that one. But where we actually sort of rate them there, and they're all soft skills, so these are transferable skills. So these are the sort of areas we can actually sort of work on within that whole employability development sort of program. And then flipping that round, how does this actually sort of work? What are the most undeveloped skills? So again, breaking that down into these two cohorts, and what's that telling us as well? Again, very similar is how I kind of sort of read it. Interesting to see managing money. I'm not quite sure where that came from, appearing in the 46 plus. But in general terms, very similar sort of profiles here. And what we've also sort of got is, I do apologise, there's rattling a little bit there. Somebody down there. There we go. Thank you. I can see you coming and muting yourself. Thank you, sir. But anyway, so what we've actually got there is those two sort of profiles. And what we're really sort of talking about there is there are a lot of sort of practical sort of skills, a lot of sort of vocational skills that are turning up here as opposed to those soft skills. And again, that's kind of an interesting analysis as well. And those are, say, vocational skills, potentially things that can actually even be trained on. To be honest, I personally am not. It's not really for me to draw conclusions from this. You've probably got a lot of your own sort of thoughts on this. But it's another area, and it'd be interesting to come back, potentially in 6 months, 12 months time almost, to sort of see some of the lessons we are learning from this programme. Because there's, I think it's up to 360 data points, potential data points per user. So, you know, all that little pieces of information that is going to be captured by the users, skills, jobs they're applying for, sentiments, etc., etc. So over time, there's going to be a massive data build up here. So as well as helping the user, as well as helping the advisor, an incredible sort of powerful tool ongoing and developing here, and it'd be good to feed back some of those lessons to you guys and to others as we build that over time. Okay, I've kind of covered pretty much what I wanted to cover. As Patrick sort of says, and it built on nicely some of their sort of research work they've done there, but these are two actual sort of live applications out there, the Value My Skills and the Create Your Own Future. The Create Your Own Future is a live program. We've got the link here. Again, we can get it up in chat for you. So feel free to go up there and play with the program yourselves. It's free at least until the end of March, so get in there quick, basically. But I mentioned it as before, and the reason really kind of want to engage with this forum, with other people within this sector, is that the Create Your Own Future is a first version, and it's deployed in conjunction with Union Learn from TUC. They're the ones who actually provide the live support. But that's just a first version. What we want to do is develop this, maybe specialized sort of versions, maybe sections of it working in different areas. It's relatively easy to change the content, change the links, all that good sort of stuff. So I'd really love to get input here. Reach out to us afterwards of how would you guys use this? What would need to be changed? Is it going to enable you as advisors to help and work with people so that you can take away some of the legwork and you can be doing some of the more high value sort of interventions, etc. So anyway, I've kind of come to the end of that point, but yeah, I'm hoping we can actually get into a bit of a discussion, some great stuff from Patrick. Hopefully there's a couple of thoughts that I've thrown out there as well. So with that, Elizabeth, I'm going to start talking.
Right, that's great. Thank you, Ian. That was really good. I won't say overview because it was a deep dive into it. It was great. I must have nearly used the wrong word then. So I know there's been questions in the chat, but do people, rather than us just rely on the chat, do people want to raise a hand? I can see Adrian's raised a hand, but others, please feel free to join in. Over to you, Adrian.
Yeah, thanks. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Marvellous. Ian, it's a really interesting, I thought, a very valuable tool. What's adoption been like? It seems to me it's as persuasively as you presented it, very persuasively, it's deemed almost a no-brainer to do that kind of thing. And I just wondered what adoption was like, and if you had any particular, if you like, adoption challenges along the way that you had to overcome.
Okay, adoption's been good. Obviously, as I say, this is rolled out in conjunction with Union Learn from the TUC. So those are the guys who've got it up on their site. And yeah, the adoption's been good. We've actually seen a good uptake. I mean, timing wasn't great, end of November. But once we were into January and February time, we've seen the numbers rising on a daily basis. I'll be honest with you, one specific challenge is that Union Learn have actually got their funding cuts being taken away from them by the government. So we in turn have actually been extending it out, and it's now been adopted by the GMB union, a number of other sort of unions are in discussion. So in the GMB, in fact, I think there's a customized version that's going to be going out there. So they very much see it, and it's come from that sphere, whereby it's a tool that they can add as extra value to their members within those sort of areas. So it's been adoption within that sort of area specifically at this moment in time. Outside of that, I know that there are, in fact, in truth, from sessions like this, there are actually individual advisor companies who are using it as well. I've actually been sending people through the sort of program. So yeah, given that it's essentially been just a couple of months, we're very pleased with the adoption process.
And it would be available for providers like ourselves to use with people, or what?
Absolutely, absolutely. As I say, the one sort of caveat I'd put on there is that it'll work very well for the individual to sort of go through the program. The actual links within Create Your Own Future specifically are back out to Union Learn representatives who are providing that one-to-one support. But yeah, there's nothing stopping you. In fact, we'd be delighted to see you get people through the program. Absolutely. And as I say, I put out that caveat, you get them on there by the end of March, and it's free. It's part of all the funding process. And those training programs as well, once you're into it, once you're registered by the end of March, value there that you've got those level 1 and 2 accredited programs from Skills Network, which are quite, there's a cost to those as well. They're getting funded in truth from AEB. So once you're in the program, if it's a direct reference through there as well, you're getting those training programs as well, provided you're in there before the end of March.
Okay, thank you.
That's great. Joe Sutherland, do you want to come in?
Oh yeah, sorry, I can't work out what's going on with my camera. I would have it on otherwise. I guess one of my interests is around older people and digital technology. So in a previous lifetime, I was a social worker, and I still am, but in a previous role, and there was a big drive to get everybody digitally ready, but we had a predominantly older clientele. And if I think about my own mother, who's going to be 80 this year, who won't send a text, let alone send an email, and indeed wrote a very stroppy letter to the Department of Work and Pensions, advising them that she would rather learn to play the piano than learn how to use a computer, when they wanted to put all pension stuff online. How are you able to engage with people who have a fear, I guess, it's not necessarily an inability, but it's a fear about using digital technology?
Is that for me? Is that for you, Patrick, or shall I pick that one up? It looks like you're about
to... No,
yeah,
you
fine, that's fine. So yes, obviously, talk specifically, you may have some more insight, Patrick, in general terms across the board. You're right, obviously it's a digital program, and by it being a digital program, that basically gives you the opportunity for scale. But yeah, there are going to be issues there, and we're not actually going to pretend that everybody throughout the program is going to be able to sort of work with it. So there's going to be, but I mentioned that when you first sort of log in, you're actually going to be asked questions like that. How comfortable are you using digital technologies? So before we actually even take you into the program, there's some support offered before you're actually getting engaged in that sort of process, So anyway, so interesting, as I say, some of the statistics is maybe we've overblown that a little bit. I mean, 82% of people in that upper cohort were still comfortable using digital technology. But yeah, there's always going to sort of be people where you're going to need that special support with them as well. And what we'd never pretend, in truth, with a digital program is always going to be able to cover absolutely everything. So what we're actually going to do there, and that is where it works with that live advisor as well. So whether it's, if you're people approaching that and they're actually not comfortable with it, okay, great. And I know there's one group that we've been talking to who use it as a collaborative tool. They've got other issues, it's more in the autistic sort of area there, but they use it as a collaborative tool. So they'll actually work through with people, the advisor will work with the individual together at that sort of point and things. So Nuri, I see you've popped up. And Nuri, to introduce Nuri for people who have not been aware, to give you a bit of a fanfare, Nuri. So Nuri is director of the company and a big part of the brains behind these programs. So I have a strong suspicion, Nuri, you've got something to add there. But you are muted, Nuri, so we can't hear you.
Thank you. So a big part of the Create Your Own Future program was to use voice and be able to use text. So don't actually have to do anything apart from press a button and then start talking as you would to any other individual. So the program specifically took account of learning difficulties, learning disabilities, and low digital capacity, essentially, to encourage as many people as possible. And as Ian said, there's a video mentor, but there's also a video mentor that people who are over the age of 50 can actually converse with. And, you know, he starts out on the journey saying, when I started this journey, I was not really very, very good with digital with digital tools or anything digital, didn't really understand it, didn't want to know about it. And it takes them on that journey of exploring what their barriers are and overcoming those fears. So Ian talked about career adaptability and using Mark Savicas's career construction theory. And one of the key things that's measured in this program is about confidence. It's about confidence to use digital, confidence to even learn, because there are a lot of people that haven't been to school for a long time or didn't really get on very well there in the first place, couldn't take account of them. So we built this tool with, we designed it, if you like, for the National Retraining Scheme cohort with 200 representatives of those 200, of that cohort in mind, in actually designing the tools. Everything from, the color contrast, how a user actually interacts with it, the level of the conversation, the tone, the nuances. It's really been very, very thoughtfully built to be able to encourage that confidence to go digital. But as Ian said, we know that digital can only go so far. So the strength of it really is when there is a physical human advisor side by side. And for that cohort, I would say that it is absolutely essential to have that side by side help for the very those that need the most help.
Just to add to what Nuri says there, if you do go into the program, definitely choose Javid. He's my favourite. He's got the best smile.
Kim. Hiya.
I've put a comment in the chat actually, and I know Elaine Smith's on this call as well. We were just talking yesterday. We've got a piece of work going on in GMC around employment support, and it's in the co-design phase, and a company called Humanly are working with us. Some of the early findings are actually challenging that stereotypical thinking about older job seekers and digital. Yeah. And this picture is changing very, very rapidly. An 80-year-old is very different to a 50-year-old, and a lot of 50-year-olds will be getting their shopping online, etc. And I don't know whether Elaine wants to say anything as well, and I might be saying the wrong thing here because I've just had one meeting with her, but it does appear that quite a few of the people we're talking to would rather go digital than go into Job Centre Plus.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think we found a real mix. We actually got more uptake when we went out and gave people the option to do things digitally in their own time. And when we've had some feedback around the types of support that people are looking for, it really is a mix of having a face-to-face local approach and a digital angle to it as well. So it's not quite the big gap that we assumed we would have, and we built that into the approach itself.
And the biggest gamers are actually not the kids. The biggest gamers are actually 50 plus.
Yeah. Interesting.
I think there's an interesting point you made there as well, Elaine, is that in your own time as well, the fact that you've got it there it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I can go and do something, you know. But anyway, that's a point there as well. And again, digital gives you that capability. Yeah.
Okay, anybody else want to come in at this point, the Q&A? No. Okay. I have really bad internet today. I don't know whether it's other people the same. It's incredibly windy. I can't look out the window because I can see the greenhouse getting a battering. So you don't need to know that detail, but it's very distracting. Would anybody, we could now just do a quick round table if anybody wants to come in and talk about their current delivery, their challenges, their successes, anything we want to share at this time, before I do a little bit of an ERSA update at the end. So feel free to raise your hand, don't be shy. Okay, we're not getting anything, so
Sorry, Elizabeth, just saw a question pop up, in fact, from Andrea. Are the Value My Skills and Create Your Own Future tool free to use for young union members, and in particular employability programs? Yes, is the short answer. That was a quick and easy answer for you, Andrea. As I say, yeah, I mean, it will ask you, are you happy to sort of share information about union? You just say no. So it's a GDPR sort of thing as well, if you don't wish. But yes, they are free. They are free tools that Union Learn has chosen and ourselves have chosen to make available to everybody.
And we're also being asked, is the link to Skills Network exclusive? Not sure what that question.
No, I didn't quite understand.
What it means, Elizabeth, is it was saying that depending on what you on the inputs you make, you get directed to a skills network course, and we do work with them. But there's also other providers, other options that may be available.
Oh,
I didn't know if it was kind of the only way out to skills network courses, or if it was a little bit more free than that.
Okay, good question. And I did sort of touch on it a little bit. I mean, Create Your Own Future is a first version. So within it at the moment, and partly because of Union Learn in association and agreements with Skills Network, is the linkage there. But absolutely, I mean, that's where we sort of see ourselves developing, is adding more value there with other skills programs that we can incorporate. So definitely a point to pursue, and be happy to have that conversation with you.
Okay.
It does also include some non-skills network courses, which are sort of more soft skills based in terms of getting job ready, if you like, but also motivational skills, study skills, that sort of thing, that are just free and incorporated there.
I've seen something in the chat that's been said to me quite a lot over the sort of the lockdowns, the working from home, the job seeking from home, about for not just for many older job seekers, but for others, that it's not necessarily the lack of digital skills, it's that they cannot afford to connect, and often using very old hardware. And I do think, as a, you know, ERSA as an organisation is, with the digital forum, we're thinking we should be picking this up. I think for all age groups, but actually we will make that case about older job seekers as well. So that seems very relevant. Patrick, you've had your hand up for a few minutes now.
Actually, it was another one for Ian or Nori. I was just interested in the AI mentors, and presumably that's the kind of an interface, and everything behind it is they're getting the same. They get the same service whichever mentor they choose. But I'm guessing. I'm just wondering.
They get the same service, but the personality of the mentor is usually picked because someone identifies with them, so they get to understand a bit about the history of the mentor as well, so that there's more affinity to that particular mentor.
Interesting, because I was just wondering, maybe this would get picked up in the learning and work review of it as well. It'd just be fascinating to see, do people of different characteristics choose a mentor that is most like them, or does the age of the person affect them? And then not just that, but also does it change the outcome at all as well? Are they more likely to go to different types of learning or anything? It would just be fascinating to see if that affected it as well.
Absolutely agree. Can't give you the answer, but absolutely agree. That will be an interesting development, see where we go with it, etc. Yeah.
Okay. So more, I'm looking at the chat there, distracting myself, but there's some really good points coming up in the chat that so I steer people to that than me read out people's longer contributions. So shall I just sort of close with a few things from ERSA? First of all, I've probably said this to many of you already, but we've been working, it feels like for months now, it's literally for months now, on our new website, and it's really close to being live, and it has a really good space for ERSA members to collaborate with each other and to certainly continue discussions and sharing good practice around agendas like this. So we're really looking forward before the month's out to launching that. So needed to just point that out. And I've been thinking about how we get the whole issue about older workers and in the ERSA context, older job seekers, higher up the agenda. And what I'm going to propose is that we do something that's a bit beyond an older workers forum, and that we do something where we put a challenge to the employment support sector about what are you as an organisation doing with what work are you doing with older workers? Have you got any tailored support? Have you got any specialist provision? And in particular, it would be really interesting to see the responses we get from organisations that are delivering the big national programmes, not just those of us that are interested in or delivering, 50 plus through building better opportunities or whatever. So I'm really interested to sort of put that forward as a challenge. And when we get that information, we can put that on the ERSA website in the collaborative space. And it might be if we get, let's see what the appetite and what the information we get is, but I'm wondering whether ERSA then does a kind of showcasing event of good practice in the sector with older workers. And I think on the back of that, we would build this forum to a bigger community of good practice. So we'll try that. We've got to get through a few things at the ERSA team. We've got to get the website live. We've got a conference week coming up. We've got a schedule of events plans, but I think we really want to put older workers higher up the ERSA agenda. So we will be doing that in the coming months. And I think finally, I'm sure people know about this already, but we've got a new digital platform. So we're doing the ERSA website with collaboration area, like launched this month. But at the end of April, tied in with Employability Day, we're going to launch something which has been a gift to the sector via ERSA, and it's something called SEF, Skills, Employment and Training Help. So I would urge everybody who's got an offer for older workers to fill in a template, maybe produce a short video for us. You will have had information about this coming out from ERSA, so that we can have a really strong older workers presence on that. And the SEF platform is primarily for job seekers and for those supporting job seekers. So you put in your postcode and if there's any other particular interest, and it filters through providers, starting with those closest to your postcode. But if you put in older workers, we will want to get to the point where it filters everybody that delivers to older workers. And we've talked about postcodes and those nearest too, but with people with a national offer, that's when we need the badge of older worker or whatever, so that if that's the box that's been ticked, it comes through. So we did a little bit of a showcase yesterday, which was very much a Q&A because the SEF product isn't ready to show yet. But just want to sort of urge people to make sure we get lots of good provision on there. And unless there's anything else, I think we've got a little bit of our day back here, finishing slightly early, but just like to thank my colleague Callum and Patrick and Ian and Nuri for the for the contributions on the agenda and to people who participate in the great chat. And yeah, let's reflect on this challenge to the employment support sector. And if people have got any thoughts around that, drop us an email at policy@ERSA and we'll pick that up. Maybe get a few of us on a little working group about how we do this. But let's push older workers right up that agenda. Okay. Thank you. See you all soon.
Brilliant. Enjoyed it. Thank you, Elizabeth. Thank you, everybody. Take care. Bye.
Thanks all.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.